With the hustle and bustle of our daily life, we tend to take no notice or neglect the fact that we humans aren't the only ones here on this floating rock in space that we call Earth. The vast diversity of flora and fauna found here, especially in this country, is absolutely breathtaking. It's sad that we aren't really exposed to the beauty that is our country's ecosystem, despite being one of the most biologically rich and diverse countries on Earth. Hence, we also tend to forget about how our actions have an effect on them.
Hello and Assalamualaikum. I bid to Dr. Iziana and my fellow friends. I am Siti Haja Aisyah binti Khairul Anwar from Group 6, and today our group will present the topic Diversity of Ecdysozoans and Invertebrate Deuterostomes. So, before we start our presentation, let me introduce my group members. Tunku Farid bin Tunku Fazli, Khairiah binti Jasmi, and also Nur Syahira binti Syamsuddin. The learning outcomes for the first topic is to identify the characteristics unique to ecdysozoans, to compare the anatomical features of roundworms and arthropods, and lastly, to describe 5 characteristics responsible for the success of arthropods. Okay, firstly, what is ecdysozoans? Ecdysozoans came from the word ecdysis, which means stripping off. Ecdysozoans are protostomes and include the roundworms and arthropods. The characteristic that ecdysozoans have is they construct an outer covering called cuticles which protects and support animal and is periodically shed to allow growth. So as you can see, here is the example of arthropod, which is a centipede. The special features or characteristic that ecdysozoans have is they do not undergo spiral cleavage. They also evolve separate sexes which come together and copulate to deliver sperm into female body or directly fertilize eggs as they are released. They also shed bimolting. Here is the first example of roundworms, which called phylum Nematoda. The characteristics of this roundworm is they are non-segmented worms, generally colorless worm. It also abundant in soil and they have tubular reproductive organs which lie within the pseudocoelom. What is a pseudocoelom? Pseudocoelom is a false body cavity that is incompletely lined by mesoderm. It also provides a space for internal organs and can serve as a hydrostatic skeleton. Cernohaptitis elegans is a famous model species of roundworms. It has been used extensively as a model animal to study genetics and developmental biology. The roundworm have a wide type C elegans kind of movement. So let's move on to the parasitic roundworms. The first parasitic roundworm is intestinal worm, which is also called Ascaris. Ascaris is a common cause of a roundworm infection in humans. It causes malnutrition, bile and pancreatic duct blockage, and also poor health. Larval Ascaris causes coughing or bloody sputum. So, the next parasitic roundworm is Trichinella spiralis, which causes trichinosis. Trichinosis is a serious infection occur from eating rare pork containing encysted trichinella larvae. Encysted trichinella larvae carried by the bloodstream into the muscle, which cause heavy infection that can be painful and lethal. The third parasitic roundworm is filarial worms. It also called heartworm disease because it lives in the heart and arteries. It is transmitted by mosquitoes to dogs. As you can see on the left side of the slide, a German Shepherd dog heart is infested with Dirofilaria immitis, which is the filarial worms. Filarial worms also cause Wuchereria bancrofti, which is also called elephantiasis. Elephantiasis, which is characterized by a swollen body part when the worms block the lymphatic vessels. It is also transmitted by the mosquitoes. So, let us talk about arthropods, which is phylum Arthropoda. Arthropod came from a Greek word which is arthron, which means joint, and pods, which mean food. An arthropod is an invertebrate animal having four unique characteristics. The first unique characteristic is they have exoskeleton, which is rigid and composed of chitin. The exoskeleton must mold as they grow. The second unique characteristic is they are segmented. Some segments are fused into regions, which is head, thorax, and abdomen. The third unique characteristic is they have a well-developed nervous system. They have brain and ventral nerve cord and also simple and compound eyes. The last one is they have variety of respiratory organs which are gills, book lungs, and trachea. So here is the example of the arthropod, which is a grasshopper.
Now we're going to remember the most important things. Arthropods are invertebrates and their main characteristics are their jointed legs. Their bodies are divided into segments and they lay eggs to reproduce, meaning they are oviparous. The terrestrial arthropods breathe through their tracheas and the aquatic arthropods through their gills.
Hello, my name is Tunku Farik and I will be continuing this presentation. Let's talk about metamorphosis. It comes from the Greek word meta, implying change, and morph, meaning shape or form. See, many arthropods undergo drastic change in form and physiology that occur at an immature stage or when they are larvae, before it matures into an adult. As you can see here in this diagram, before the caterpillar matures into a butterfly, it undergoes metamorphosis here at number 3. Among arthropods, the larvae eat different food and lives in a different environment than the adult does. A good example to that is the crab, a crustacean that undergoes metamorphosis. See, larvae crab mainly eat plankton, hence also lives in an environment where there's an abundance of plankton, mainly where there's a lot of sunlight. While the adult crab catches live prey such as squid, fishes, and prawns maybe, and scavenge organic matter as well. See, the adult crab lives as a bottom dweller or at the bottom part of the body of water. Another good example is the caterpillar, where it feeds on leafy vegetation while the butterfly, its adult counterpart, feeds on nectar. This results in reduced competition and increasing the animal's overall fitness or chances for survival. Right, so let's continue with crustaceans. The name crustacean itself is derived from the hard, crusty exoskeleton, which contain calcium carbonate in addition to chitin. Though most of them are really diverse, the usual things among most crustaceans are that they live in marine and aquatic environments. Their gills are positioned above the walking legs, as shown here. The first pair of walking legs may be modified as claws, as shown here. Next, the head bears compound eyes and 5 pairs of appendages. The first 2 pairs are placed in front of the head and have sensory functions. They're called antenna and antennules. The other 3 pairs lie behind the mouth and are used in feeding, called the maxillae and also the mandibles.
Next, the Burmese appendages on the thorax and abdomen are segmentally arranged, where one branch is the gill branch, as shown in this picture right here, and the other is the leg branch, one of these. Next are copepods and krill. Copepods and krill are small free-swimming crustaceans that live in the water, where they feed on algae. They are food sources for many different types of animals such as sharks, whales, and other fish, despite their small size. They make up for it in abundance, thus they are harvestable. It's interesting that one of the biggest animals out there feeds on one of the smallest. Next, barnacles. Barnacles are sessile crustaceans with a thick, heavy protective shell. Barnacles can live on wharf pilings, ship hulls, seaside rocks, and even bodies of whales. These barnacles begin life as a free-swimming larvae, and after undergoing metamorphosis, their swimming appendages transform into cirri, where the cirri is used to filter feed on anything that passes through. Next, centipedes and millipedes. Centipedes or hundred-leggers. Each of their body segment has a pair of legs. They're found under logs, in crevices, and in leaf litter. They prey on worms, small crustaceans, and insects. Its head has a jaw-like mandible. Its first segment has claw-like venomous jaws that kill or immobilize prey. Next, millipede or thousand-leggers. Each thoracic segment bears one pair of legs, and each abdominal segment bears two pairs of legs. They live under stones or buried in soil. They feed on filter leaf litter. Their cylindrical bodies have a tough chitinous exoskeleton. Some even secrete hydrogen cyanide, a poisonous substance.
Hello everyone, I'm Khairia and today I'm going to talk to you about insects. Most of them live on the land, and the body of insect was divided into three parts: head, thorax, and abdomen. The head bears the sense organ and mouth part, and then the thorax bears three pairs of legs and possibly one or two pairs of wings. The wings is to enhance the insect's ability to survive by providing a way of escaping enemies, finding food, facilitating mating, and dispersing offspring. And the abdomen parts contain most of the internal organ of the insect. Insects undergo a complete metamorphosis that involving drastic change in form, and their body parts are completely reorganized. At first, animal was worm-like larva, then form case or cocoon, becomes pupa, and emerge from the cocoon. This life cycle, which is complete metamorphosis, allow the larva and adult use different food source. This is the example of insect diversity. Next, I will talk about typical insect, which is grasshopper. The third pair of grasshopper leg is used for jumping. The first abdominal segments bear a tympanum. This tympanum is used for reception of sound wave. Grasshopper have two pairs of wing, which is forewing and hindwing. The hindwing is broad and thin, and forewing is tough and leathery. The posterior region in exoskeleton in the female has ovipositor. This ovipositor is used to dig a hole in which eggs are laid. Grasshopper undergo an incomplete metamorphosis, a gradual change in form. In grasshopper, in their excretory system, it contains a Malpighian tubule, and in their circulatory system, it contains a slender and tubular head. In their respiratory system, it begins with an opening in the exoskeleton called spiracle. From spiracle, the air will enter to go to the trachea. In their digestion system, the foods will temporarily stored in crop. Next, I will talk about salicylate. Salicylate live in terrestrial, aquatic, and marine environment. They include terrestrial spiders, scorpions, ticks, mites, horseshoe crabs, and sea spiders. All the appendage was attached to cephalothorax, not on abdomen. The first pair was pincer-like salicylate that used in feeding and defense, and the second pair was pedipalps and that have various functions such as feeding or sensory system. This is the example of sensory diversity, which is horseshoe, crab, scorpion, and spider. Next, I will talk about the characteristic of this sensory. The first one is horseshoe crab. The body was covered by exoskeletal shield. As you can see here, the exoskeletal shield. The anterior shields that was horseshoe-shaped carapace bear two prominent compound eyes. Is scorpion. Their pedipalps are large pincers, and at the end of their long abdomen, it has stinger that contains venoms. The last one is spider. Spider have a narrow waist that separates cephalothorax from their abdomen. Spider doesn't have compound eyes, but they still have numerous of simple eyes. Their pedipalps is used to hold, taste, and chew food. And the last one, the abdomen of spider have thick glands that allow them to spin webs to trap their prey.
Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. My name is Nur Shaira binti Shamsuddin and I'm going to present about the diversity of deuterostomes. So by the end of this section, you should be able to list two major groups of animals in Deuterostomia, and then you should be able to identify the major morphological structures of the sea star, which is the echinoderm, and lastly you should be able to describe how sea stars move, feed, and reproduce. So the stratum divided into two groups, which are echinoderms and chordates. So echinoderms have sea stars and sea urchin, while chordates have fish. But in this chapter, we are going to focus on sea star, which is echinoderms. So echinoderm is invertebrate, and it is characterized by radial symmetry and water vascular system. So later, I will explain what is water vascular system. So in this structure here, you can see the spine is for protection, and we have skin gills here for respiration, and tube feet here is for locomotion and feeding, and lastly the eye spot here is to detect light. So this is the full structure of the sea star. You can see here they have 5 arms are attached to the central disc, and this is sieve plate that will be used for water vascular system. So this is another example of echinoderm. So they have sea cucumber here and also sea urchin. Okay, next, how does sea star move? Do they have any specific muscles to move to find the food for them to survive, or do they have any specific bones? So the answer is no, because the locomotion of sea star is by water vascular system. So that means they move by water vascular system. Okay, first, water will enter through the sieve plate. The sieve plate is a tiny hole on the upper part of sea star. So water enters through a sieve plate and passes through a series of channels until it reaches the ampulla here. So the ampulla is the structure that connected to the tube feet. So the contraction of an ampulla forces water into the tube foot. So that's why sea star can move, because of expansion and contraction of tube feet. So as you can see here, the tube feet is moving, but actually they move slowly. How does sea star feed? So as we all know, the function of tube feet is for locomotion, but other than that, tube feet is also used for feeding, because as you can see in the picture, the tube feet will attach to the side of the shell, and then the tube feet will open the clump. So then the cardiac stomach will contact the soft part of the clump. So the digestion will happen in the cardiac stomach. So next, the broken parts of the product will then continue in pyloric stomach. So that's why sea star have two stomach, which are cardiac stomach and pyloric stomach. Okay, so other than clump, they also feed on oysters and other bivalve mollusks. And I'm going to show you the creepy next one. Okay, you can see here the tube feed will bring the clump toward the center because there will be cardiac stomach there. So then the tube feed will open the clump and the digestion happen in the cardiac stomach. Okay, next, how does sea star reproduce? So there are two ways, which are asexual and sexual. So they will reproduce sexually through regeneration, which means the body will fragment it, and each fragmented can generate a whole animal as long as the portion of the central disc is present. So the central disc is very important. It's like a center of activity. For example, there are cardiac stomach and pyloric stomach in the central disc. Okay, next. Sea star also produce sexually. Sea stars, for example, sea stars spawn and release either eggs or sperm at the same time. So that means they will undergo external fertilization. You can see here the larva state of sea star. You can see it is bilateral symmetrical, but once they grow up, they will be radial symmetrical. So I think that's all from us. Thank you for your attention, and you can find us if you have questions.